Dean at Claude Littner Business School, University of West London. On behalf of the Business School and the University, I would like to give you our warmest welcome to both the University and to this event. Celebrating International Women's Day 2022, Progressing Gender Diversity and Women Leadership in Businesses. University of West London prides itself for its work on equality, diversity and inclusion, and helping learners from all backgrounds break traditionally perceived barriers to achieve great things. Therefore, we're very happy and grateful to have the opportunity to hold this online event today to celebrate International Women's Day 2022, to contribute to progressing gender diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and to encourage and inspire more women to pursue leadership positions in businesses. Many studies have established that human capital employed, particularly female leadership, has a significant impact on the financial performance of an organization, and hence there are all the reasons why companies should rebalance the gender ratio, especially at senior and board levels. My colleagues, Dr. Alham Javaharidsadeh, Professor Chinbanzi, and myself have also carried out a research project on impact of female leaders and intellectual capital on financial performance of FTSE 350 companies. And based on empirical evidence demonstrated in the study, the project had 4 key findings. First, there is no disparity between female and male leaders affecting financial performance, which means the capability or the ability of female and male, there is no disparity there. Secondly, female leaders present a positive impact on the financial performance of a number of particular industries, such as industrial, consumer staple, and consumer discretionary. Third, intellectual capital presents a positive impact on financial performance. And the 4th key finding was that female chairs demonstrate a positive impact on certain selected companies' intellectual capital throughout the years, which proves that the higher the position they achieve, the more positive impact they have on the company's performance. In line with such evidence, it is very pleasing to see that there has been progress in gender diversity and balancing of male-female leadership in the last few years. According to FTSE Women Leaders Review published just last month, which is a continuation of the Hampton Alexander and David's reviews, there are a number of key points I would like to mention here. The FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 companies have made steady progress with the number of women in the combined executive committee and direct reports increasing to 32.5% and 30.7% respectively, which is a good progress. In terms of women on boards, the FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 have again made good progress during the year, with women's representation now standing at 39.1% and 36.8% respectively. So again, there are steady progress there. The number of women in most senior board roles continue to increase, with 48 women chairs and 115 women occupying the senior independent director role. And the last one I want to share with you, almost half of all FTSE 350 boards now have a woman in either the chair or senior independent director roles. All these progress is definitely worth celebrating. However, quoting Tony Danker, Director General, Confederation of British Industry, in the same review, he says, the moral and business case for gender diversity is watertight, but the job is far from done. As we emerge from the pandemic, there is more needs to be done to dismantle the barriers that prevent women rising to the top. So, give you some examples what is not progressing as well as we would like to from the same report. For example, there is still low appointment rate for women, with only 62% of all available roles in 2021 going to men. The gender say gap continues, with a predominance of male voices in businesses. And there are still too few women in top jobs like CEO, FD chairs, SID roles, given overall progress. The theme of International Women's Day 2022 is Break the Bias. focusing on continuing to foster a gender-equal world and inclusive work culture, a world free of bias, stereotyping, discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. We should celebrate and increase visibility of women's achievements, raise awareness against bias, take actions for equality, and uplift and inspire more women to pursue goals without bias or barriers. This event would like to contribute to raising awareness of these to further progress gender diversity, equality, and inclusion. In response to some of the missions of International Women's Day 2022, key themes of this event are empowering women, make women's voice heard and their success story visible and celebrated, allyship, inspiring and uplifting women into leadership position, and of course, breaking the bias. I'm very honored to have the company and contribution of a number of very kind and distinguished guest speakers today. And let me introduce you to them very briefly at this stage and the schedule of the event. So in a minute, I would have Mark Fried, CEO of E2W Limited, to join us to talk about Men for Inclusion. And then at 10:25, I will have Joy Maitland, who is the Managing Director of Inemmo, who is also an award-winning executive coach and Amazon best-selling author in leadership, to join us to talk about women in leadership, finding your North Star. And then at 10:50, I will have 3 postgraduate consultants at our school who are working on a project under the Fresh Minds for Business program at Claude Business School. And they are going to come along and talk a little bit about gender pay gap in the financial industry. And then at 11:05, there will be a panel discussion on the topic about breaking bias. And I will have a panel member, a number of panel members. And these are Sujata, Sagrani, Antonio Ciarleglio, Debbie Holmes, and Natalie Marie Lindsay. And I'm going to introduce these panel members in a bit more details later when it comes to that section. So for all the audience who are watching now, you could also participate in this event, and I would encourage you to participate by joining our discussion. You can leave your comments and send us any questions you might have via the chat, and we will pick up as many questions as the time allows. Okay, so I won't keep you any longer away from our brilliant speakers now. So let's bring in our first guest speakers, Mark Fried. Mark Fried, CEO of E2W, who is the founder of Men for Inclusion campaign in the financial industry to promote men's active involvement in bringing about a fundamental cultural shift that embraces and is inclusive for women leaders. Mark was a co-founder of the company, and since 2022, the organization has supported women in their financial service careers and enabled financial institutions to gain the benefits of a more diverse workforce. Under Mark's leadership, E2W's community now boasts 10,000 women working in senior positions in financial services in London. Mark has also held several influential positions. For example, he sits on the advisory board Diversity Project Investment Industry, is a strategic advisor for Women's Societies Alliance. He was also a board member on the Women in Finance Charter Industry Board, and he has also won the Champion Award for supporting gender diversity business in the community in March 2015. So good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Amelia. How are you? And thank you very much for that introduction. You flattered me. You flattered me.
Thank you. I thought I haven't done enough, justice for you.
Yeah, no.
So it is really lovely to have you, Mark. I feel really, really lucky to have the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody like you who is so influential in this field, really. So Men for Inclusion, what a fantastic advocate and topic to start the event. So Mark, as you are a recognized leader in diversity and inclusion, it would be great if you can share with us where your passion for this subject or for this Men for Inclusion campaign comes from.
Thanks, Amelia. I think, first of all, it's entirely appropriate that in this International Women's Day week next week that we're talking about male allies. The theme of International Women's Day this year is break the bias. And there's clearly a connection. But it's interesting when I talk to men across the industry about male allyship and talk to them about where their passion comes from. Those that are most engaged quite often talk about a personal case. And my personal case really comes right back to my childhood in the 1960s. That sounds a long time ago to a lot of people, I'm sure. But I was brought up in a household where, quite unusually for the time, my parents had a very equal type relationship. I was just as likely to see my dad doing the ironing as my mum going out to work. I was taught how to cook and do the household chores just as much as my sister was taught how to change the tire on the car and check the oil. So I was brought up in a very equal home where I had very good role models. I then, my education was completely different. I'm dyslexic. And I was brought up, I went to school at a time when everybody was treated the same. That was the mantle. And as a consequence, and this was before the age of computers and things, our teachers used to write things on the blackboard, and our way of learning was to copy them into our books. As a dyslexic, I failed at that because I couldn't write quick enough to keep up with the teachers. That meant because I wasn't being treated as an individual, and there wasn't an inclusive classroom where everyone was taught differently and was allowed to learn in their own way, I left school with no qualifications at all. I then got a job as a postroom boy. They used to have postrooms in those days, in the mid 70s, and I was really surprised when I walked into this office for the first time, and all of my colleagues in the postroom were men. There were, and as you walked around the building, you saw pockets of areas that were full of women and areas that were full of men. The women were in areas like the typing pool, the switchboard, reception. They were secretaries, and the men were all doing more profit or P&L based roles. They were engineers, they were draftsmen, they were, and that world just seemed completely odd to me. And I looked up to my leadership, and I didn't see anybody that actually, they all looked like me, but in reality, they were all very different from me. So it was really from there that I started to think about actually my upbringing, diversity and inclusion, what we now call diversity and inclusion, and that's really where the passion comes from. And I want to live in a diverse and inclusive world where everybody has got equal opportunity.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. So I suppose that you have experienced some kind of challenges, and so you have that, hence you've got this passion to make sure that everybody are treated equally, have got equal opportunities, equity is there, and there is an inclusive culture in the workplace and all that, which is brilliant. And I mean, Mark, I have to share with you, I don't know if you know, but actually 2 years ago, I held another event, celebrate the International Women's Days back then, that was focused more particularly on the financial industry. And at that time, I already said, quoting some of the key authors in the field, already said, we need more men to really push this agenda further. And it's really great to see somebody like you today having created a whole campaign, really brilliant. Right, so I'll move on and I'll ask you something slightly different. So some of our students actually are working with you, analyzing the progress the financial industry are making in closing the gender pay gap. I mean, we've talked about gender pay gap for a very long time, to be honest, and it would be nice to see where it is now. And why do you think this work is so important, and what are you seeing?
Amelia, yep, lovely, and thank you. I'm delighted to be working with Sushmita, Yumi, and Zahra, who I think are on later, talking a little bit more about their work. So I won't spoil their thunder, because I'm sure they've got some really good and valid points to make. But we've been talking now about diversity, about inclusion, about equity for years. And it's interesting over the last 5 or 6 years how our business leaders, and you mentioned the Hampton Alexander Review and the FTSE Women Review, as it's now called, and how our leaders are all standing up and making huge commitments about their commitment to diversity and their commitment to bringing more women into leadership and bringing those up. We see report after report after report. We look at diversity points on firms' websites, and we see all of this great news. But then we look at, with gender pay gap reporting, we have for the first time got a set of data that we can look and see actually how firms are progressing, and how they're living up to those commitments. And there seems to be a gap between what is being said and what the data shows us. So, for example, in the corporate and investment banking world, so we're talking about the Goldman Sachs's, the UBS's, the Credit Suisse's of this world. When you look at how they are progressing, over 24% of those banks have got fewer women in top quartile earning roles today, or when they last reported, than they had 4 years ago when reporting started, and that's 4 years ago. It was 2017 was the first reporting year. So 24%, over a quarter of banks have actually got fewer women in top quartile earning roles. And nearly half of those banks won't actually have an equal number of women and men in top quartile earning roles until after 2050. Now, I'll be long dead by then. So we need to accelerate things. Yeah. When you look at average pay and average bonus in the sector, the average woman in the sector only in 2017 earned 68 pence for every pound that a man earned, and by 2020 that had closed by 3p. So 71p in the pound. When you look at the bonus gaps, the average woman earned 44p in the pound in 2017, and that had risen by 6 pence to 50 pence in the pound. Those figures are embarrassing, frankly, and we need to close that gap. And your students, Sushmita, Yumi, and Kobayashi, are looking at what firms are doing and what they're saying, and against the results that they're reporting, to see where those gaps are and what good firms are doing and what firms are saying and what's actually being achieved.
Right. Those are very interesting data. Absolutely agree with you. We need to progress. We need to accelerate the progression, basically.
Yeah.
Great. So this year's theme for International Women's Day, it's break the bias. What does that mean to you, Mark?
I think it means a lot. For the last 20 years since I established E2W, I've spent that time focusing on and supporting women to progress, succeed, and flourish in their financial services careers. And when you look at what firms are doing, a lot of the focus is on supporting and helping the women to succeed and flourish. But clearly, a lot of that is helping women to succeed in my world, in a man's world.
Mhm.
A lot of it is about training you to behave like me. And to me, that seems wrong. We need to stop fixing the women, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, can you expand on that a little bit? Very interesting.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of a case that I came across recently. So one of our members, a very senior lady working within the financial technology space, um, came to me because she was she had a light bulb moment.
Mm-hmm.
She had, in her words, she had progressed through the industry and got to her position by being trained and coached, and to lean in, to speak up, to wear trousers. Should we use some terminology?
Okay.
But each year, for the last 5 or 6 years, she had taken it upon herself to also mentor and coach female graduates coming into the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And that she had been doing that successfully every year for, say, for the last 5 or 6 years. And this year, the graduate turned around to her, the graduate that she was coaching and mentoring, turned around to her and said, "Do you know, when I applied for this job, everything on your firm's website said that you were an inclusive employer.
Mm-hmm.
Everything on this website suggested that I would be able to bring myself to work. Everything, through the recruitment process suggested that you understood that by bringing myself to work, that I could perform at my best and deliver at my best in this firm. But then, as soon as I arrive here, all of your coaching and mentoring is about changing me. It's about making me behave differently. It's about stopping me bringing myself to work. And frankly, as the young woman was saying, I want to bring myself to work. So it's not me that's the problem. Yeah, it's actually the culture and the leadership within this firm who expect me to behave in a certain fashion, their fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We then went on as Men for Inclusion to work with that leadership team, an all male, apart from the one lady who we were working with, but an all male leadership team. And what happened at the beginning of those conversations is those men all said, yeah, it doesn't happen here, and we go on and talk about accidental sexism in a minute, but it doesn't happen here. We're a great firm. We're wonderful. We're inclusive. We're amazing. But then we got the lived experiences of the female colleagues that were working in that firm, and presented those to the leadership team, and suddenly the leadership team's eyes were opened to their male relative advantage. And how their accidental sexisms were affecting their female colleagues.
Right. That's a very interesting story, but this is not something, I would say, oh, I've never heard of. I mean, I suspect it's not uncommon to have, this kind of experience for some women, put it this way. So why do you think that there are firms, if you look at these days, if you look at a lot of companies, these sort of like diversity, inclusion are absolutely top on their sort of like value strategy statement or whatever it is. But how come do you think, on one hand, firms are so feel that it's so important to stress all these and sort of making the world know this is what they're doing, but at the same time, when actually people join the company or what's actually happening in the company, it seems like that's not the case. Why do you think that's the case? Is it conscious? Is it unconscious? What's happening there?
And Amelia, I think it's totally unconscious. And we've one of our co-founders, a brilliant woman by the name of Dr. Jill Armstrong, has done 4 or 5 years research into this very topic. men collaborating with women in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few things to note here. First of all, as many of our leaders are straight white men.
Mm-hmm.
And as straight white men, we are often blind to our relative advantage.
Right.
Anybody who has a relative advantage is typically blind to and doesn't have an understanding of those who don't have that advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Is the first thing. The second thing, and this isn't a blame game, it's not bad men and good women. We all display, all humans, it's part of our human makeup, and it's embedded in us, right from an early age, have accidental sexisms. Yeah. I remember, soon after I set up E2W, I used to regularly, and bearing in mind this was sort of 20 years ago, I regularly used to go and pick the children up from the school gates. And I'd be the only man at those school gates picking the children up. And I experienced accidental sexisms the other way round in that environment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody exhibits accidental sexisms. But as powerful men who own the culture of a firm, our accidental sexisms inhibit the careers, reduce a great lived experiences of our female colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we do that in many just ways that we don't really see on an everyday basis. And let's just talk a little bit. You talked about male allies to start with. Let's just quickly take a trip down and let's define what we mean by a male ally.
Yeah.
I speak on a lot of panels. I hear a lot of men speaking about male allyship, and quite often, and I think you talked about it in there, it's men talking about and giving an example, or women giving an example of when they helped a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they helped her get promotion. Maybe they coached her, mentored her. Maybe they, sorted a particular problem out for her. And those interventions, they are highly welcome. But it does seem as if when you look at them, you think, well, isn't that your job as a leader to be doing that every day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shouldn't, if you wouldn't be on stage here and saying, I helped a man once, I helped John or Peter, but just because you helped Jane, you want a medal for it. Those interventions are welcome and needed, but I think more than that, a lot more than that, we need men to understand on a daily basis how their behaviors and values affect the women who work for them, around them, and above them. And if we've got time, Amelia, I'd be delighted to share what some of those accidental sexisms are.
Yeah, maybe a quick example that would be really great.
Okay. So Jill's research at Cambridge found a lot of things. Our accidental sexisms. I mean, quite often, if there is an opportunity for a career-enhancing opportunity, that I will naturally give it to a man. Yeah. If there is an opportunity to do some office housework, some admin type task or less high profile type roles, I'm more likely to give it to a woman. And by the way, as women, you are more likely to put your hand up for those admin roles.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not all my fault. We're also, the evidence shows, and Jill, interviewed over 7,000 business people about this, that obviously men have got these social bonds within the workplace, formal and informal. And
Yes.
we often don't include and make sure that we're talking to and engaging with everybody within our teams. Yeah. We often, as inclusive leaders, we've got to make sure that everyone around the table has a chance to speak. Yeah. And women are often the quietest around the table. We shouldn't be training you to speak louder. We should be training leaders to make sure that they are giving those quieter voices the opportunity to speak and the platform to speak.
Yeah. So can I just say, Mark, are these the sort of, so is raising awareness of these kind of unconscious, bias or whatever you call it, in your Men for Inclusion campaign?
It is indeed. Yep. It's
Yeah.
at the heart of what we're doing here.
Excellent.
It's about working with male leaders and firms to help them become aware, understand, and then change their
Yeah.
practices.
So when you speak to men, promoting all these, making them aware of these unconscious bias, how would you convince them it could be a win-win?
Yeah, indeed.
Why should they do that?
That is, Amelia, that is really so important. Obviously, I talked at the very beginning about where this motivation came for me, and it came from right from childhood. Not everybody has had those same experiences, and quite often, when we look at the diversity D, I, and E journeys, this started off with D, diversity, and that actually naturally excluded white man, straight white man. It was about everybody else other than him. Yeah. But then quite often what we've done to those people is gone to them and said, here's the business case. Yeah. Here's your targets. Be more inclusive. Yeah. What we've never really done, and we certainly do at Men for Inclusion, is talk to those men about the win-win that this represents. And we talk about that in terms of 4 pillars. The first pillar, obviously, is the workplace. Yeah, we all, there's just immense benefits to an inclusive workplace for everybody. Yeah. We want to work in an environment where, our bosses got there on merit, not because they went to the right school or because they're the right gender. We want to work in environments where everybody gets the opportunity to contribute. And certainly, I've worked in environments that I wouldn't want my son to work in, let alone my daughter. So those workplace environments are good, and they're more productive, they're happier. Which leads to then the health and welfare benefits of being inclusive and working in an inclusive environment. Less mental health issues, lower male suicides, better relationships. All of those things that give us joy every day actually comes from inclusive environments. Yeah.
Right.
The third thing is then choice and opportunity. You've only got to look at some old films, look at some old newsreels, and see what the male lived experience of the 1950s and 1960s was compared to the lived experience today. We no longer need to comply with male stereotypes. In fact, many of your young students are probably gender neutral these days. So those stereotypes of old that limited man and their male experience have gone. We no longer need to support a football club or drink warm beer or go to golf. We can be outwardly gay. We can come to work as ourselves, and we can live in an environment as ourselves these days. So there's huge benefits there. And the fourth one, and the last one that we talk about, is I think now men have got a responsibility. For over a century now, since the suffragettes in the UK,
Right.
Women and other people from underrepresented groups have fought for their rights and fought for the opportunity, fought for equality, and in many respects, all of those benefits that men are now getting, we've received with minimal effort, minimal input. Yeah. It's now time that we as men stood up, joined hands with the rest of the world, the rest of society, and run towards the finishing line so we can put this to bed forever.
Brilliant. Very delighted to hear that. So finally, I know that you need to go and we need to move on. So leave us with a thought.
The final thought is a good one. I think, we're all familiar, and I hope we're all familiar with the saying, diversity is being invited to the ball, inclusion is being asked to dance, and equity is being able to dance like no one is watching. When we hear that, we often think about it from the female perspective, from the ball goer's perspective. And not the male one, not the ball organizer's perspective. But it is largely men who, in this analogy, are organizing the ball. So as a ball organizer, what would you do to make it more diverse, inclusive and equitable? And how would you change the way you invite people to the ball? How would you change the atmosphere and the culture at the ball to make sure that everyone feels free and comfortable to dance?
Brilliant. I really love that metaphor, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I believe that would definitely give our audience some food for thought. So Mark, thank you so much. I would love to continue talking to you, but I know you have a very busy day. So thank you so much indeed for sharing your insights and spending your valuable time with us this morning. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and thank you again, and I'll let you go back to your very busy schedule today.
Amelie, thank you, and thank you everybody out there as well. Do reach out to me if you want to know more. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Bye-bye. Right, so let me welcome our next guest speakers, Joy Maitland, who is the Managing Director of Inemmo and an award-winning executive coach and Amazon best-selling author in leadership. Joy is an executive coach in leadership development and organizational excellence consultant, an author with a wealth of senior-level business experience and a track record for injecting teams and organizations with vision, passion, energy, helping improve performance by identifying and developing talents at all levels. As an executive coach, she works with senior and mid-level managers on critical development, and that needs to accelerate leadership, design, implement dynamic leadership development solutions, and advise broader operational activities. She's also an author. So as an author, Joy empowers her reader to adopt modern leadership techniques as well as innovative ways of thinking and working in order to achieve leadership excellence. Her book, From Alpha to Zen, Leadership for a Brave New World, helps her growing worldwide readership in their journey to become the kind of leader who inspires those around them. So welcome, Joy. How are you today?
Thank you. Greetings, Amelia. I am fantastic. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm so excited. I keep telling you I'm so excited to talk to you about, about all these sort of things at this event. So what a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Should we start, Joy? So
let's get into it.
As an award-winning executive coach and leadership development consultant, right?
Yeah.
Tell us why you have a passion for developing leaders, developing people, and share some stories of your personal journey into, finding this passion.
Well, thank you for the question. And I'm really pleased here today to share this moment with you. For me, I think that this journey started, as most journeys start, some years back, right? I was a senior leader within an organization prior to becoming or starting my company, Inemmo. And oftentimes, as you will know, if you are senior within an organization, you get the benefit of all these wonderful training opportunities, training courses. You go away for weekends, they fly you off here to be a better leader. But what I observed, Amelia, is that my team managers and their teams didn't have those opportunities. And in fact, for most companies, the training budget is really squeezed the lower down the pecking order you go, right? So what I started doing is coming back. I was thinking, how can I fix this? Right? I was never going to convince them to increase the training budget. So I started coming back and distilling information from the course materials I had been given on these courses and writing programs for my teams. So I had my managers and their team members and everybody, participating. And I started running training sessions for them so that they could be they can be empowered and they can thrive in their roles. Because let's face it, I can only be a great leader if the people who report to me are empowered and developed. So I just put one-on-one together and made two and made it work. The other thing I believe in is empowerment. And it comes in many different ways. I give you an example. So in my division, as it was then, there were many people called supervisors in my division. And and I thought, I don't really like that word supervisor. It seems quite weak. It doesn't really mean very much. So I changed their job titles to team leaders because I wanted to demonstrate my belief in them, the trust and the faith I had in them, that they were going to do great things for themselves and for the people they led. So all of these, so I changed their titles to team leaders. I cannot tell you the difference it made. Manager is another word that you think, manager. Where does that come from? The Italian manager, right? And that is all about training. Training and it's training and handling horses. That's what it means, right? So I like the word leader. And I like to think that I empowered my team members to become leaders, whatever levels they were at. And the love grew and the passion grew. And I did it more and more and more. So I started my company in 2005 when I was still fully employed as a senior leader within my organization. And I'd come home in the evening and I would be coaching people overseas in the US who were how many hours behind us. And it just grew from there, Amelia. So I hope that gives you a sort of sense of where I was coming from.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that story. Absolutely. I echo what you said. To me, I always think, obviously there are many definitions of leadership, there are many different perspectives. But to me, I always feel that if you're a leader, you need to be passionate about developing people. That's what leader is about. You bring people up, isn't it? So,
Absolutely.
So delighted to hear that.
Absolutely. It is so empowering. And by the way, the name of my company, Inemmo, when I decided to set up a coaching practice, I called it Inemmo. Now, Inemmo is made up of the first two letters in inspire, empower, EM, and motivate, Inemmo. And that's how I created it. And that's what I want everybody within my organization to live, each and every moment of every day.
Great. I did wonder, what does that mean?
Now you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, Joy, the title you have given us for your talk today is Women Leadership, Finding Your North Star, right? So finding the North Star, what does that mean? And why is the North Star important for women in leadership position or those who aspire to become leaders in businesses, women leaders in businesses?
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had an occasion or an experience where you felt that the rug was pulled from under you? I'm not saying that you've had such an experience, but let's say you didn't get the promotion you wanted, you didn't get the job you wanted, your role was made redundant, whatever it is. Have you ever had such an experience where you just feel
setbacks, and you wonder
yeah, indeed.
What do I do? What should I do?
Yeah, indeed. You see, a lot of my clients come to me when I always say a lot of my clients come to me when they're 5 miles from empty. They're struggling to hang on. Yeah. I wish it wasn't so, but it is the case that a lot come at that moment, at that juncture in their lives. So when you get the rug pulled from under you, most of us tend to end up in, start going through the stages of grief, where it's denial and anger and bargaining. And what we're trying to do is to get to acceptance. The idea is to get to acceptance as soon as possible, because then you're motoring. Yeah.
Right.
If you have, so here's the North Star now. The North Star, as I understand, is also called Polaris. It is a fixed point in the sky around which the sky turns. And we hear people talking about the true north. And, if you get lost, that's your beacon, that's your direction. It doesn't shift. Yeah, it doesn't change. So the way I look at True North is perhaps a set of guiding principles. It could be a vision or a mission, your own personal vision or mission, for example. Mine, for example, is be the difference that makes a difference. That's what I believe I'm here to do every moment of my life, with every interaction I have with someone. I want to make a positive difference in terms of the way we engage with each other, the way we lift each other up. That's what we want to do. So imagine if we all had a North Star, if we had all a North Star that we can recognize and we can hold on to when these things hit us. Instead of the rug being pulled from under us and us sinking into grief and not being able to come out of it and telling everybody to leave you alone and you'll get over it, whatever it is, emotions you go through, you can learn to fly because you're thinking, all right, that's just another learning experience. If we could get to the position where we go, okay, I'm not saying that you won't be disappointed and all of that sort of thing, but I'm saying let's not wallow in it. I'm saying the North Star helps guide us based on our principles and our vision and our personal mission. And we should hold firm to that so that, and be prepared that things aren't always going to go our way. But whatever happens, one thing is true and one thing is fixed. This is our mission, and we will be okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I suppose, if I understand you correctly, it's about believing in yourself, always looking back at that, like, the North Star, reflecting, take a step back, and then sort of restart and say, this is my mission, as you just said, and carry on going, going further. So it is really interesting. I think that's really good advice. And do you actually have any sort of real life example, just briefly, to share with us, anonymously, obviously, that women, experience really, really bad setback, and then they suddenly like, okay, no, I need to look up at my North Star. Let's restart, and then become successful. Have you come across those? Just share one brief example with us.
Well, you just almost word for word given the example of I can think of several clients who've had that situation whereby they, as I say, 5 miles from empty is when I see a lot of them. I see some who are come to you and ambitious and driven and want to get to where they want to go and want help with that. So I've had situations where women, for example, let's see, I'm thinking about one particular client who had a change of leadership, a change of CEO. So she's senior, she's on the board, but the CEO changed. So the person to whom she reported changed. Now, this was within the civil service. And if you know, a few years ago, there was a whole move to make it more commercial, right? To stop waste and all of that sort of thing. So they put in charge someone who was from the corporate environment, and his requirements from his leaders was to have them step up into this new understanding, a new environment that was more commercial. Yeah. And of course, many of them struggled with it. And this particular individual, she was prepared to leave. She wanted to leave. She just thought she wasn't liked. He didn't like me. I can't do anything right. I've been in this job for how long, and I know my job, and yet I feel useless. and all of those sorts of things. So we sat down and really unpicked what was happening. And the bottom line is that she was scared, and she just lacked the confidence and the belief that she too could rise and deliver. So we worked over the months on that. And then one day she came bouncing into the room. And I said, well, what's going on? What's going on? And she said, I just came from the board meeting and I did a presentation. And the CEO stood up and said, that's what I want. That's what I want for my directors. You see that? That's exactly what I've been talking about. And she was like on a high. So that's just one example of where that has occurred. But it takes work. It takes work and it takes belief.
Well, that is a really inspiring story. I think it's very encouraging for a lot of women who are listening, right now. I mean, hearing that, I would love you to be my mentor, Joy. Right. I know you're pressed for time because you
I am. Yeah.
Another event to go to. So maybe one last question. So, for all the women who are either are already in leadership position or who aspire to become a leader in any business organizations, especially some of them are students, more junior in their career. What advice would you give them as a last thought, before you leave, so that they can prepare themselves, they can, start working on it?
Sure. Let me just first say that for me personally, I don't know whether your audience would agree, there's never been a better time to be a woman in business. I think with all the movements that we have out there and the fact that we are finally finding our voices, whether it be we're talking about gender pay gaps, diversity and inclusion, and all of those opportunities that it presents for us to really rise above and be the best that we can be in the various environments. I would say, number one, learn to set boundaries. You don't have to say yes to everything. You may not, and I don't think that you have to work twice as hard. I think you work twice as smart. We are smart people, so we need to work twice as smart.
Absolutely.
Jim Rohn, one of my gurus, always says, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And I really subscribe to that. The reason I do it, I do because I know that we need to prepare ourselves for the opportunities. Like I say, now is the best time. Develop the skills and the attributes. If you don't know how to present, develop presentation skills. Learn to understand what negotiation skills mean, influencing skills. All of those supposedly soft skills, I always say they're not soft skills. If they were soft, everybody would be doing them. They are hard, but you can work on them and be great at it. Yeah. I think also we need to focus on and promote our achievements. Very often as women, we tend to hide our light under a bushel and not really, and be, oh no, I couldn't possibly, or no, will they believe me? Come on, let's just go for it, go for it. I think we should want to empower other female young leaders and other female leaders, because I think being in the service of others is important for our movement, as it were, ensuring that we don't pull up the ladder behind us, but more than that, that we reach out to the younger leaders, the younger women in business, and really see what their needs are and try to help them address it. I think we should play more to our strengths and not our weaknesses.
Yeah.
We are, well, fortunately, I can't say unfortunately, women are mothers. Many women are mothers. So we don't maybe necessarily have the extra time, but things like networking is important. Networking, and work being the operative word there. And I mean, I could go on, but I think one big recommendation I would give to leaders out there, aspiring leaders, leaders in business, is to get a coach. Get a coach. Eric Schmidt, the ex-chairman of Google, yes, Google, he said, somebody recommended that he get a coach. You see, this is how the guys play smart, right? And he said, I am so successful. Why do I need a coach? He said, until I got one. Until I got one. The difference it made in his performance was remarkable. And he shared his story about that. And if you can't afford a coach, not everybody can afford a coach. If you can't, get a mentor. There are many, many people out there who are willing and able to mentor individuals, whatever the age they might be. And, don't just get one mentor, get two. If you can, you can get one for this and one for that. Get a mentor, get a coach, and really and truly push forward in terms of what you want to achieve. Find your North Star. Find your North Star.
Brilliant. Joy, thank you so much for all these top tips. I gain a lot from this conversation from you. I'm sure our audience feel the same. And this is so motivating and inspiring. I would love to continue, and we can probably talk forever. Exactly. But like I said, I know you have got another event to jump to. So we will have to end this conversation, unfortunately. But, like I said, it's so enjoyable to speak to you, and you really have given us a lot of things to take away. So thank you so much indeed, Joy, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone, and have a good, my voice is going now. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care. Brilliant. So next coming up are 3 postgraduate consultants on the Fresh Minds for Business program at Claude Business School, University of West London. So we've got Sushmita Khatri, Yumi Kobayashi, and Zahra Claude. This is a culturally very diverse team. Probably you can see on the screen. Right, I can see Zahra here and Yumi. I'm not quite sure, whether there's any tech. Oh, it's Sushmita coming on. Brilliant. So hopefully we'll be able to see her soon. Hello, brilliant. We can see you now. So let me quickly introduce them first. Yumi from Japan has worked for a jewelry company as a diamond buyer in Japan for 3 years, and then moved to America with a year contract in Walt Disney World in the US prior to joining University of West London to pursue a master's in international business management course. She has also worked in the UK in both the telecommunication and jewelry sector, and she aspires to gain a managerial position when she finishes her master's study with us. Sushmita was born and raised in Nepal. She read social work in her first degree. She has also worked as a teacher in a school for 7 years. And you might think teacher, easy job, but it's not at all. She felt that, actually she worked very hard. It was a very competitive and challenging environment. She would like to broaden her horizon and hence choose to come to London and pursue a master's degree in, again, international business management with us. She feels that the event topic today is really very interesting, as it resonates very well with some of the things that she's learned from her first degree. And therefore, she told me she's very excited to join this event today as a speaker. Zahra was born, raised, and graduated in the capital city of Iran. And she's also a mother of a 14-year-old daughter. She has a strong industry background as well, and her industry is in banking and telecommunication. Due to the nature of her job, she has traveled widely and has a lot of experience working in international environment. So they are going to talk to us about the gender pay gap in financial industry, which is the project that Mark, our first speaker, has mentioned, which is very important. So hello and welcome, Zahra, Yumi, and Sushmita. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you, Amelia. How are you?
I'm all right. Very excited, hosting this event, and brilliant to have you on board. Really brilliant. So let's start, right? So tell us what this gender pay gap project is about.
So our project for E2W is to analyze the gender pay gap based on the data provided by the company. The data includes 52 firms within the investment and savings industry in the UK from 2017 to 2020, which is extracted from the gender pay reporting on the UK government website. The gender pay gap reporting has become mandatory for all legal entities employing over 250 people since 2017. However, we can't fully understand what is really happening with just the data alone. Misleading information can stand out. For instance, companies recruit more women's new starters with the hope to close gender pay gap in the long term can lead to enlarging the gender pay gap in the short term. The gender pay gap is a complex issue, and it is essential to monitor the progress of the firm by looking at the data thoroughly. That's why we are here to transform the raw data into meaningful information. And so far, we've come up with implication, which is financial industry still holds traditions of old boys club, and we assume that resulting in less proportion of women in senior level and relatively larger gender pay gap than other industries.
Right.
Yes, and then and then as a recommendation,
hold on. Yumi, hold on. Let's come back to those. I would love to hear that. I'm sure our audience would love to hear more. But at this point, I would like to actually know, what does this project mean to you personally? Any of you?
So should I continue?
Okay, I'll tell. Is it okay?
Yeah.
According to International Labour Organization, gender pay gap is relatively high in Nepal. Nepal is a patriarchal society, male forming a very large, occupying a largest segment of workforce. So when I researched and work that relates with my previous study, social work, I researched and work about women empowerment and gender equality. During that process, what I found is a lot of girls from rural areas are still deprived of education, which results in less occupational opportunities and gender pay gap. And on the other hand, in the organization are also it's male dominated, so which result gender pay gap. And for this, I have recently started working with an organization existing in Nepal to provide education to both girls and boys, which I believe both are the future of the world.
Brilliant. I'm really pleased to hear that. What about Yumi or Zahra? Would you like to share with us, what it means to you?
Yes, good morning, Amelia, and good morning, everyone. As Amelia kindly has introduced all of us, yes, I come from Tehran, from Iran. Closing the gender pay gap requires time and effort, obviously. However, as a woman from a country which is sadly ranking 150 out of 156 in global gender pay gap, and as a mother, I'm very interested in this topic and this project, and strongly believe by minimizing the gender pay gap, more career and opportunities will obviously be created for our daughters and the future women in a global level.
Great. And Yumi?
So I've truly realized that our project is a crucial topic for the modern society, and I'd be delighted to join this project very much. This issue is not something that happened to others, especially being a woman. I was touched by Amelia's passion for this event that made me feel that I would like to take the ownership for the project and conduct research with enthusiasm. And sadly, Japanese gender pay gap is the third largest among OECD. This is quite serious because the causes of gender pay gap are not only related to common issues such as male-dominated management and stereotype for the role of women, but also the ignorance of the issue, resulting from the perceived culture that is avoiding confrontation and inexpressive. So being international Japanese women, I would like to speak out this issue to raise the awareness in Japan by stepping up from my comfort zone. I hope our findings will trigger the action to close the gender pay gap in Japanese organizations too.
Brilliant. I'm so pleased, that you share all these ambitions with us. Your passion, I can actually see how passionate you are about this, gender diversity, closing gender pay gap, make the world a more equitable place for women and men, not just one side or the other. Absolutely brilliant. Right. So let's get back to the project. Okay. So tell us more about the project. So far, what research have you already done?
As we have collected both numerical data provided by ETW and non-numerical data by from Farms report, so we have decided to conduct analysis in two different ways. So far, we have gathered data in Excel, which provides a government website, but also includes Forms web forms data like size of the company, age of the company, gender of the CEO, and nature of the company, which will be the criteria to start carrying out quantitative analysis. So as for qualitative analysis, we have been reading through Farms report year by year, focusing on two perspectives. One perspective is about the past and current progress, what the farms have done, and the other perspective is about the future action plan. Based on our notes, we are planning to create code and categorize the data to identify some trends.
Great. At this point, actually, I would like to bring in a question from the audience. So you've mentioned about the sort of ranking in terms of gender pay gap for your for the home country of yours. And do you happen to know how is UK doing? What is the UK ranking in the world in terms of pay gap, gender pay gap? Any information at all? Don't worry, that's not a problem at all. I'm sure you'll find out later on when you do more, progress a bit further into your project. So let's move on. So, given the research work you have already done that you've just mentioned, so what are the highlights so far? Can you hear me?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yes. So basically, as Sushmita has kindly explained about how we're gathering all this data, most of the UK-based companies, obviously, especially the one in financial services, are aiming to have 50-50 gender balance. And they are working toward this goal, basically, on a senior levels. Majority of the companies have new strategies in order to minimize the gender pay gap. Well, the fundamental change can be slow. We need to be realistic. But the most firms have implemented new initiatives in order to help deliver and to drive the changes. We have few examples for this, which the project started about 4 weeks ago, so we have another 8 weeks to complete the project. So we don't have a complete analysis, but based on whatever we have already found through few companies, there are, for instance, they are strengthening their pipeline of female leaders, or they are promoting flexible working, for instance, for women, and much more. For instance, they have some of the companies, they have new portal implemented just before COVID in order to make it easier for working mother, which they can work from home, easy access to the portal and everything, which became very useful during the COVID pandemic as well. So there are many examples like this, which we have gathered some information and happy to share, but obviously it depends how much time we have.
Give us 2 more examples quickly. one or two.
Okay, just a second. Sorry, just. Okay, for instance, there are firms that is a London-based company which in 2019 they hired a student from for apprenticeship. That was a scheme for apprenticeship. They have hired 70% female as a student, which was a great move for this company. And same company, because they are really trying hard in order to make this gap to a very low level and close the gap in a way. Same company in 2020 hired Raymond Jackson. I don't know if anyone knows Raymond Jackson. He was a former national diversity officer from Morgan Stanley. So this company basically took further steps, bringing someone who can make changes to the company. So as the new global head of basically diversity, equality, and inclusion to help drive the global strategy in the company.
Brilliant. Actually, I should let you guys know, the discussion you've just had, the issue, the findings or highlights you've brought up actually has generated quite a bit of participation from the audience, and there are questions coming in. They wonder, for example, what if any research you've come across also include benchmarking across different sectors, etc. Unfortunately, due to timing, we don't have time to answer those, but I'm so pleased that only 4 weeks into the project, you have impressed me a lot. That you have already got so much work done. You're already sharing all these insights with us. So I really can't wait until your project is finished. So basically, we need to let you move back on to working on your project. I know that again, you guys are busy. So just to sort of round up this discussion with you, which is really, really interesting. The business school and myself personally feel really, really proud of you, Sarah, Yumi, and Sushmita. Really, genuinely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amelia.
You're very welcome that you're working on such an important and meaningful project with E2W. And thank you so much for coming along to this event and sharing with us, not just the project, but also a bit about your personal stories and aspirations. I really think, your persevered pursuit of your dream career and your ambition to make the world a better place for women, for our daughters, for the daughters of our daughters, is definitely worth celebrating. Well done. We definitely need to celebrate it. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your project, and I'm sure you will go very far in your future career. So thank you very much again, and take care.
Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, last but not least, we now have a panel discussion on the topic, breaking the bias, which is the theme of this year's International Women's Day. So let's welcome our panel members. Sujata Sagrani, transformation, lifestyle, and career coach. She has an extensive experience. She has extensive experience coaching, mentoring clients, both personally and at work. She's a veteran in empowering her coachees or mentees to reinvent themselves and be a better version of themselves. She's highly effective in creating a safe and yet highly motivating environment to inspire them and help them with behavioral change to be successful. And she also has a background in sales, marketing, and change management, and has worked with many organizations nationally and internationally. Another panel member we have today is Antonio Ciarleglio. He's the managing director and founder of Albemarle Consulting. He is a well-known and respected international search and selection recruitment consultant. For over 8 years with Stanley Search, he specialized in recruitment for clients in the investment management industry based in London, New York, and Europe, primarily working with financial technology vendors, hedge funds, consultant firms, and market data solution providers across both the buy side and sell side. He then left Stanley as their managing director and owner in April 2014 to join Harrington Starr. In October 2018, he established Albemarle Consulting in London as an independent recruitment specialist firm that provides international search and selection recruitment and tailored coaching and career consulting. The third panel member we have today is Debbie Holmes, People and Culture Manager at Chiswick Park and Joywork. Debbie is a highly skilled learning and development professional with more than 20 years experience in both private and public sector environments. She consistently developed effective learning and development strategies to create skilled and competent teams and individuals in companies. She has experience in multi-site learning and development, consultancy, advisory, and coaching at a national level. She is very experienced in training and developing a range of learners from frontline staff and apprenticeship to senior management team. She has an extensive skill set, which includes relationship management, stakeholder engagement, continuous improvement, coaching, mentoring, performance management. And she's a proven excellent communicator and negotiator and have the ability to develop strategic relationship with individuals at all levels. Last but not least, we have a fourth panel member who is Natalie Lindsay. She is a student on the second year of our BSc Human Resources Management course at Claude in the Business School, University of West London. Natalie has worked with a leading recruitment company in various roles, such as career transition, assessment and development, and workshop facilitation. She has also worked at the university as an HR administrator. As I understand, she aspires to become a coaching consultant or a manager in the field of human resources management. She's very determined to have a successful career, and she has worked very hard to equip herself and strengthen herself. She has worked with some incredibly talented women who are committed to breaking the glass ceiling placed above them, and they are her inspiration. I'm so pleased. I would love to welcome, all of you joining us. Thank you so much. And also particularly, I'm so pleased to see another student of Claude Little Business School here on the panel at this event today. So how are you? How are you all today?
Good.
Thank you.
Very well.
Good, thank you, Amelia. Good morning to you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Great. So let's start the talk then. Right. So first of all, I would, all of you are great advocates for gender diversity and inclusion. So in your experience, just briefly share with us, what do you think are the key barriers or challenges for women in the workplace? Who would like to, talk about it or go first?
I don't mind starting.
Go on then.
I think part of the issue is that a lot of the gender biases are unconscious. So people don't actually know that they are doing it. And that stems from recruitment, the language in recruitment adverts, whether women choose to apply for jobs that require you to be confident and demanding and those types of roles. So I think there are some definite bias in recruitment. So women are not necessarily applying for those senior management roles. But I also think that once women are in senior roles, or even in any role in business, that there are definitely unconscious biases that occur, which cause pain and definitely some kind of concern as to whether or not those women in those arenas are capable of doing the role that they've been placed into. Right.
Antonio, shall I bring you in as the only man on the panel?
Sure. Thank you very much indeed. Great honor to be here. There's no doubt that the strange thing that we're still talking about this in the 21st century, instead of seeing bias and challenges becoming diminished and reducing, they're actually increasing. And certainly in my experience in the last 16 years in recruitment, many challenges that are being faced by women is stereotyping. We still have that issue as to the place of women, whether it is in the workplace or not, inhospitable corporate cultures, and that lack of internal sponsors and recognizing potential women leaders and sponsoring them. Many women are over-mentored and over-coached in terms of, you're doing a great job, we're going to put you into line management, and then 2-3 years later, they're still waiting for that promotion and they have to justify and fight for it because there are no internal sponsors. And of course, inflexible work structures in terms of allowing women to have that flexibility because they are committed to family commitments, they are committed to having the necessary requirements to have flexible working hours. And of course, we still have, sexual harassment increasing rather than decreasing. So there are still many challenges.
Right. Okay. So,
sorry, I think it's really interesting you saying about that, Antonio. My son's 22 now, but even when he was very young, and myself and my partner, when he was sick, there was no discussion around who would be off.
Yes,
it was me.
Exactly.
And we both had senior roles at that time, but it was still me that stayed off.
Yeah, my point entirely.
I think a lot of women will agree with, we will have the same experience as you, Debbie. Great. And Sujata, would you like to briefly share with us, what you think about, this?
Well, I think it's quite interesting because at the beginning of the session before us, he mentioned how sorry, something's happening here. He mentioned how unconscious bias plays a big role in everything, and I think it's a very difficult one because there is unconscious bias. People aren't necessarily aware consciously of how they're feeling, how they're coming across. But then sometimes they are aware. They know exactly what they're doing. So where do you draw the line? How can you tell the difference? It's a tough one. I think it's really difficult. And just covering what Antonio mentioned, I was going to talk about, yes, sexual harassment, childcare, pregnancy.
Huge.
I'm trying to think if I've left anything out. There are many. So,
and also parental leave, and actually a bias from the men's point of view of it being not appropriate for them to take the amount of parental leave that they're entitled to, because they're the man, they should be at work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely agree as well. I share what you said. And Natalie, I would like to bring you in as well, as a student, but also who have got, quite a lot of experience working in the industry as well. What do you think personally, or maybe, other women that you know of, what are the key challenges or bias?
Yes, thanks for having me here. I was actually going to mention about the paternal leave because in my last role, that was a big thing where it is available for the fathers to take, but the procedure wasn't as straightforward, I think, as it was for the maternal side of it. And I think also not a lot of men are aware that it is there for them to take, or they may be aware that it is there to take, but don't usually take it. And I think that is also that also constitutes a bias, because if it was taken up, or if the shared parental, it also gives both sides that time off, and a share. So the nurturing is not just left to the mother, as I think it was Debbie who mentioned before about who stays off when the child is sick. So I think that is also something for us to look at, where not only is it made available, but encouraged to be taken. I think that would make a difference as well.
Yeah. So I think earlier in the event today, I think we kind of touch on, sometimes men feel that there is a stereotype sort of, they need to fit into. So, maybe that's another thing, why they either consciously or unconsciously behave the way they do. Right, so let's move on. It's getting very interesting. So given all these challenges and bias, what have organization or industry that you know of been doing to address these issues? And what more they or we as a community together, we could do going forward, in your views?
Okay, I'll start again. Sorry. So I think certainly from the organisations that I've worked in, there's been a huge shift in training on unconscious bias, training on equality and diversity, and having a regular conversation about those things rather than it just being a mandatory once a year go in the training room. So I think that is happening, and certainly has been happening more and more over the last few years. I think that there could definitely be the focus on supporting women into more senior roles, and not just I think I said to you before, Amelia, I work for a construction firm, and the only woman in a senior role in a board of 10 people was the HR director. And that tells you a huge thing that the only woman is the one that deals with the issues and the tissues, and all of the manly things are done by everybody else. But I also think that we could start at school, and we could start to build female empowerment at school, and understand that sciences and maths are not just for boys. And we encourage our young women at school by getting young female leaders in to discuss their experiences and to tell them how far they could achieve and what they could do. But I don't think there's enough of that happens.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I do think it starts very early on in life. So school, birth. It also has a lot to do with background, where you come from, what your parents have told you, what is expected of you in terms of your achievements throughout your life. And there is this notion, which I had touched on briefly with Amelia and the others a few days ago, about men allowing women to progress, which some people say needs to happen. Oh, the men need to allow the women to progress. And I'm not quite sure if that's a chauvinistic statement, because I'm not sure why we need to be allowed. I mean, we're not supposed to discriminate at all anymore, at all, about anything. So where is the question of being allowed by the men for the women to achieve? Surely it should be happening or across the board and just uniformly without any permission from anyone.
Just the right person for the job. It doesn't matter who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's about parity in the workplace, a level playing field for all, no matter your background, your ethnicity, your diversity or sexual orientation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely agree. And also I would like to add in, actually, recently I've actually done a course called Beyond Inclusion. So and we had discussed some really interesting issue, and the coach actually said that he runs a lot of these courses in many different institutions, and he said that actually, based on his experience, obviously it's not empirical research, it's based on his own experience, but he said that he did notice a lot of these courses, when they're not compulsory, you will have more female choosing to attend these courses rather than men. And then we discussed what could be the possible reason for that. And one of the things that comes up would be something like probably the privileged group. I mean, some people can argue against what privilege, but one way to look at it is it's perhaps the privileged group. They don't feel there is any need unconsciously. I'm not saying that they deliberately keep this preserve this privilege, but they just unconsciously feel that, well, I'm fine, why should I go to these courses? Yeah, I mean these are very, very interesting observations and discussion, really.
And certainly just to add there, Amelia, certainly I've been working with some fantastic companies who have made some great changes and great leaps going forward in terms of developing workplace flexibility, in terms of transforming that culture internally to understand what is conscious and unconscious bias, raising that awareness with inherent bias, but also improving those HR practices and increasing what I think is important is role models internally, sponsors and inclusive networks for women and by diverse and equal areas of opportunity. What more companies can do, what more organizations can do, there are many things, but just a couple of key things. Senior leaders, and these can be women as well as men, although men in the majority, but senior leaders need to collaborate. We need to see more collaboration where they provide the same opportunities for advancement, career growth, as Debbie mentioned earlier, that the best person for the role to do the job, regardless of who they are and regardless of their background. But inherently, it tends to go towards a more male-dominated environment, and that needs to be open. So we do need that collaboration among senior leaders, including women senior leaders, to get involved and help and support. And the other thing that's important that does get lost is that the inherent bias does start top down in the culture. So that culture needs to change. And the vision of the company, vision helps a leader prepare for the future, prepare for the growth of the business. And it's really important that the organization provides a clear picture that women are really important in the growth and success of that business, and to include and engage with them, particularly if they're potential leaders of the future, and bring them into that fold to show that there is a future for them within the business, and not just expect them to contribute, get frustrated, and leave after 2 or 3 years, because women retention is something that we need to be looking at really carefully as well. And how difficult it is sometimes for them to get back into the workplace, as we found during the pandemic. More women were laid off, more women were made redundant, women were furloughed first and foremost, and women were not re-engaged quickly after the furlough. And I speak from personal experience, having seen that with the candidates that I've been dealing with.
They're actually. Sorry.
Amelia, I just wanted to add quickly on a point that was made earlier, where someone mentioned that it should start in schools. And I just wanted to know if you guys remember Connection that was aimed at last year's students in high school. So that was a government initiative, I think it was, and it was cut out. So I think the term, if you see it, you can be it. I think our young people need to be involved a bit more. Have these people coming in. So if there's not a body for that connection, getting people working in different roles, even with the STEM program that's going on, getting people coming in. When young women see these people, who knows? It may just make them aspire to be one of those persons and get that rolling. So that was just something.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just seen a comment, from one of our audience. Someone once told me when a woman does housework, she does it as it's her role, whereas when a man does, he is helping his wife or partner.
and that's the same.
Unconscious bias.
Exactly. I used to have someone say, "Oh, is your husband babysitting tonight?" No, it's his son.
That's a really good point. I mean, earlier, Mark Fareed mentioned that he grew up in a household environment where his parents treated each other equally. It was a 50-50 partnership. And it's the same in many cultures, and that's very much in the Italian culture. And I grew up in that environment where we were taught to do the household chores or the general maintenance around the house from when we were very, very young. So for me, living on my own or married, I feel it's a 50-50 partnership, and I enjoy, participating in that. But it's not standard, that's for sure. It's still not in the 21st century.
And I grew up in it was just me and my mum, and so I've been able to change a plug. Not you have to do that these days, but from an early age, and do all of those things that the man would normally do, because we didn't have one, which was great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Great. Actually, Natalie, what you said earlier, leads very nicely into my next questions that I want to ask our panel members, really. So I know that, most of you also have some career mentoring experience. So, and you guys, Debbie, Antonio, and Sujata. So you have very kindly offered up your very valuable time to be the mentors for some of our students in the business school. So tell us why you are passionate about mentoring and why you come on board on our specific CLBS, Claude Business School Career Mentoring Programs for our students.
Well, I can tell you in a couple of sentences, I'm very passionate about coaching and mentoring. I love to help people, and the individual that I'm mentoring for the university I think it's going very well. I feel that I help her. I sense it, and I think it is helping her to progress. So it's about helping the individual, but also how the fact that I walk away feeling that I have done something for someone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel the same. I'm working with an individual who has a whole range of things going on in her life, from a huge family to working to studying and trying to juggle all of those things that we always try to do, some not so successfully than others. But she, again, the reason for me, I think, is that quite often in my career, I had imposter syndrome, where I didn't think that I was as good as actually other people thought. And it's sometimes just about having someone to listen to your ideas, listen to your thoughts, and just say, wow, that's brilliant. That's a really good idea. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to improve that? How are you going to get that implemented? Because otherwise you sit back and you think, actually, that's probably not really good. I'm not going to be able to do that. And it just needs someone to give you that little stroke and say, yes, go for it, do it.
Yeah, super important. For me, over the last 16 years, I've worked with many students and postgrads, and I remember working with many students and postgrads who completed their masters and bachelors back in 2006, 2007 when it came into recruitment. They just didn't know where they were going in their careers, and helping them not just find a job, but help them manage their career, and watching them grow into becoming leaders today and working with them in growing and building the teams was hugely satisfying. And the reason why I became much more officially involved in the mentoring program with the business school is because that I realized that unless you wake up 12 years of age wanting to be a doctor or a lawyer or a solicitor, many students don't know what they want to do, even though they're going to university with wanting to study art or politics or law. So for me, it's to help them create a roadmap as to how to start that career journey when they come out of university, but also help them understand their potential, what their career goal is, and how to start that journey, and give them that encouragement to have that self-confidence, have that self-belief, because it's surprising how many of them lose that belief and self-confidence and almost conquer the world attitude in university when they come into the workplace. And there's a huge commercial world, how to navigate that. And I get great passion and joy and reward in helping that. And the student I'm mentoring at the moment is incredibly talented, incredibly knowledgeable, and really knows the direction she wishes to take, and just needs that guidance and showing that roadmap so she's heading in the right direction.
But again, I think it's really important to do that early on. So I worked in my last role with a huge amount of apprentices. And again, coming into a workplace who didn't really know, I mean, I had no clue what I wanted to do until I was about 27, 28. So coming into a workplace at 16, 17, 18, and not really knowing what it is that you want to do, and having that mentor to be able to discuss those things with and do that from a really early age. And I'm still in touch with some of my apprentices that have been qualified now for sort of 3, 4, 5 years, and they're flying, and it's brilliant to see. Some of them not in the career path that they originally chosen as an apprentice, but that's fine. You know, it's that journey and how to assist people along that journey.
Absolutely.
Right. So Natalie, I'm going to bring you in. So why did you join the program as a mentee?
So when I heard about the program, I was so excited. I'm a second year HRM student, and that's management, and that's exactly where I want to go. When I tried telling my fellow colleagues about the course, they weren't showing much interest, but I thought this was just perfect, because most of my roles have been administrative. So the jump from administrative to management is quite wide, you know. But I thought for me, mentoring would be the confidence. I think that's what I needed more than anything else, the confidence to know that, you know, if I was going for a role and I had on the paper, I had everything I needed, but I needed to have the confidence to know that I had everything I needed to go for that role. So for me, the whole mentoring program was all about building the confidence. And as Debbie said, sometimes, you know, the imposter syndrome, you may know all these things. Somebody may see you as this person, but you see yourself as that person. So having someone working in the field that you're aspiring to go into, because my mentor, she is coaching and she does consulting, and I'm leaning in both those directions. So having someone doing what I'm hoping to do, it's quite inspiring for me as someone looking to go into that field, and being able to get advice and mentoring from that person. For me, it's a big thing. So I think it's a win-win for both of us.
Brilliant. I'm so pleased to hear that, both sides, the mentors and the mentees, seems to be enjoying the program, seems to think that there's a lot of value in the mentoring program, in the mentoring process. I mean, like Debbie, you said that, mentoring, I guess it's also a way to really explore, and get to know yourself, because you said some of them just change their career path completely, which is perfectly fine. And it's a good thing, you get to know what you want, which is very important, I think. Just want to come back to one thing. So we talk about mentoring, brilliant, right? So you share your views, your experience. Coming back to this term sponsor, Antonio, because actually I know that there are some classes of students who are actually watching this from a classroom, and they might not understand what it means by sponsors. Can you briefly tell us what this is?
By having an internal sponsor within an organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really very straightforward in terms of when you're in an organization and you have your set responsibilities, your set role, and you're doing that job, and you can be doing it really well, and the line management is being very supportive, and your team around you is being very supportive, that's great. But sometimes you need someone who recognizes that you have real talent, you're a shining star, and whether you want to be a leader or whether you want to take on board more responsibilities, someone needs to be there to not only support and guide you as an internal mentor, and that's something that companies need to bring on board, is more mentors, more consultants, more coaches, but to work internally to really raise your profile, really be your ambassador, and really help the company see you as a potential future leader. So not only support in developing you as the team member, doing your job well and doing it better, but also helping be your ambassador and sponsoring and promoting you within the business so that other people can see you, hear about you, and learn about you. And I've always said that the best managers in the world have the best people around them to help them shine, so that at some point those managers can move on and have someone to inherit their seat. The royal family is a great exponent of that, of developing future, kings and queens as just a natural path, and that moves forward, whether it's male or female. And many companies don't have that. They don't have a succession structure. So those sponsors are really important to develop those succession structures from the bottom up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, I'm conscious of time, and I know, all of you, your times are really valuable. So just one last thing, very briefly, to round up this panel discussion, what would be the last key takeaway you want to give us for our audience?
I think for me, it's, this is not about degrading or punishing anybody, men, women. It's about every one of us being equal and being able to do exactly the same roles in different ways, because we have different ways of doing things. But it's about the individual, not about their gender, not about their culture, not about where they've come from, not about their background. This is just about, are you the right person for this job? And how do we encourage those people that are the right people for the job to go for those jobs? Because I think there are a lot of people out there that don't feel they have the ability or the capability to be able to do the jobs, and they're not being encouraged.
I agree.
Me too. Echoing Debbie's words, it shouldn't, if you have the skills to do the job, it shouldn't matter what sex you are, what your gender is, what your background is. None of that should matter. All that matters is whether you can do it or not, and how qualified you are, and may the best person win.
And I agree with you, Antonio. I think, I was made redundant during the pandemic, and I think one of the biases that I definitely came up against was age.
Oh gosh, all the time. It's incredible. Yeah, I come across that all the time. And I really underline and echo what both Debbie and Sujata is saying, for me, there are many, many key takeaways, but two key ones are there is a mindset that we still have to break. And as everyone is saying, that it doesn't matter race, background, ethnicity. We need senior leaders of all racial types, of all backgrounds, to take responsibility, to call out when they're seeing inherent biases, and to empower women leaders, to empower anyone from any background to be able to grow and develop and to really be the best they can be. And I think we have to reignite this sense of urgency again and really deliver these messages in a very powerful way and empower women, as earlier on Joy was mentioning, that women need to be empowered, and that is by the people around them. So we have this collaboration to drive forward.
Right.
I think my one thing I would add to it is, as a HR student, I think in the workplaces we do need to concentrate more on our policies. If we're trying to get a level playing field, then it has to come down to the policies that we have in place, because that's the only way we'll be able to say we have a level playing field, if we have the policies in place that will benefit both men and women.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think these are really brilliant takeaways. Because of time, I'm really conscious of time. I would love to carry on this panel discussion. I think there's a lot of energy, passion, and a lot of really, really useful discussion. Hopefully will generate a lot of awareness and, consciousness to really think about these things, reflecting, because a lot of times, we discuss that it's unconscious. People just don't think about it. But until you really bring it out to the light, everybody discuss and think, it's not going to make things are not going to move forward. So I hope that, we generate some awareness, some discussion. I hope the discussion will carry on outside this event. So thank you so much, Sujata, Antonio, Debbie, and Natalie. I really thoroughly enjoyed the panel discussion. There's so much insights and inspirations. The discussion surely has given us hopefully some impetus for actions among our audience to progress this gender diversity and inclusion further, breaking the bias. And particularly, Natalie, I wish you well for the rest of your study and chasing your dream. You will get it. Just keep going, right?
Thank you.
I hope you get some really good tips here, getting a sponsor, getting a mentor, all those things, right?
Thank you. And I just want to take the opportunity to say thanks to Sujata as well, because she has just been brilliant.
Oh, Natalie, thank you. Thank you. Amelia, it's such a privilege to have been here today. And I wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to you and everyone on the panel. It has been an absolute honor.
You guys are so kind. You are the ones helping us and you thanking me. You are too kind. Right. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I hope, you enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend. And so this brings an end to the panel discussion. So thank you very much again to all four of you. That's it for the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Amelia. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So the event is coming to an end now. Before we close, again, I'm conscious of the time, so I'll go through this very quickly. It is very important for me to, once again, give my most sincere thank you to all our guest speakers today, and I'm really very indebted to them. I would also like to give a big wholehearted thank you to a lot of colleagues who have supported the production and smooth running of this event, particularly, but not in any particular order, Joe Lossmore, the head of communication and event, Joe McGrath, who is with me today, who is the communication officer, social media, Iqbal Mohindra, who is the project manager, operations and engagement, Angela Warwick, client experience coordinator, UWL, Fresh Minds for Business, Tony McVale, senior lecturer, Dr. Denisha Wirawardene, head of subject finance and accounting, Paul Burns, senior lecturer, Michael Bryan, senior lecturer, Dr. Yanni Domenis, senior lecturer, Dr. Hannah Sam, lecturer, and Dr. Shareth Gamla, the dean of Claude Business School. This appreciation extends to all other UWL colleagues, whom I cannot name one by one here due to the time constraint, but really, really greatly appreciate all your support and help. Finally, and very, very importantly, thank you so much to all the audience who have been watching this event and contributing to the discussion via the chat. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope you find something useful and I hope you enjoy this event. So that's it for the event. Thank you. Goodbye.